video, you will learn how to build a NodeJS API using the Express framework. Hey everyone, what's up? This is Simon back with a new API tutorial. Yes, I wanted to do something different because I think it is, one, important to understand what an API is and how it works, and two, it actually feels pretty good if you know as a front-end developer how to build your own API. And with Node.js and JavaScript, you already know enough to build your own API. We're gonna do this today. We're gonna build a REST API with Node.js using the Express framework, which is like the most basic framework. It is really lightweight and there's not too much to it. There are tons of other great frameworks like Nest.js, Koa, Harpy, Fastify. Like there are tons of frameworks, but they usually just offer a bit of additional tooling on top of Express. So it completely makes sense to just get started with the Express basics. And today we're gonna do this. We're gonna see how to set up Express, how to create a new project, how to define CRUD endpoints, create, read, update, delete, how to run the application, how to add Typescript, how to connect it to GitHub, and finally also deploy it. So we're gonna cover everything from getting started with a blank folder to having an API that you can show to your friends. This tutorial is part of galaxies.dev, so make sure you check out galaxies.dev. If it's not yet live, get on the list, but there will be some epic resources for developers in the very near future. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, of course, because there will be also epic videos on here. But now let's dive into the Node API. All right, the first step to get started with Node and Express is to first of all install Node.js. If you haven't done this, go ahead. I can download it for Mac OS. You can install it for Windows. It's pretty easy, the installation. Just make sure that you install both Node.js and npm. So to install npm, how do you install npm? What's the command to install this? Install npm. Is it automatically installed? npm install. Okay, we can you can just do this. Anyway, once you've done these commands, installed Node.js and installed npm, you can run node-version and npm version, and it should log out something like this. Doesn't have to be really exactly like this, but it needs to be installed. Okay, there are two more things that I highly recommend. One is a version manager like N. So this is a tool, or you can also, a lot of people also use NVM as the Node version manager, because in the future you will definitely switch between Node versions. I can promise you it just happens. And therefore, I highly recommend you set up one of these, because I can just type in N, I can select different Node version, and boom, immediately I'm on the different Node version. Otherwise, this is really complicated to like update all your packages and set up all the stuff again. So this is definitely what you want to have. On top of that, you might want to install a testing tool. So the most common is Postman. I think this is actually, yeah, this should be part of Chrome, I think. Yeah. I also use Insomnia since some time. Well, like if you Google for best API testing tools, you're gonna find like 25 tools that you could use. You can also use an extension like the Rapid API extension inside of Visual Studio Code. It's just important that you have anything to test, because honestly, I just like this UI. Here Insomnia, or previously Postman, you can create your own environments, collections, and once you start really digging more into APIs, a tool like this becomes very, very handy to save requests, so you can switch between them. You even see the previous results, and you don't want to do all of this from the command line. So once you get this set up, Node, npm, and probably a testing tool, you can create a new folder somewhere. Just a blank folder, dive into it and call npm init-y. So this simply means automatically answer yes to any prompt. This will first of all create our package.json, which defines an entry point, a description. For our project, no other packages are defined in here. So let's install our first package by running npm install express. This will update the dependencies and add Express, and also give us the Node modules folder. We only install one module. However, we have a Node modules folder that is bigger than my usual hard drive content, simply because Express has a lot of dependencies, and those dependencies might have their own dependencies, and this is just the fun of the JavaScript ecosystem. Cool. Once we get this, let's close this and let's manually create an index.js file here. So this is the entry point, and we can now go ahead and get started with our application. Const express, equals require. Don't worry, we're gonna change this in the end if you're already advanced. For now, we're gonna do it like this. Const express, then we can create a new app if we call our express here. Really, we're gonna start with the basics. And once we got the app, we can also define a port. Const port, let's start this on port 3000. And then we can define our routes. This is really, now we need to define the routes, and then we need to start the app. So starting it is simply calling app.listen, and we want to listen at our current port. And once we've started the listening, too many brackets, it's early. Let's put out a console log. Listening on port whatever. In fact, we can already start this now. So let's go ahead and run node index.js. Example app listening on port 3K. However, there's not really anything defined. So let's define a route. We can bring in a simple get route. Everything looks pretty much the same, just like the listen. The get looks like this. We define the URI where we can access this route, and then we got a request object and a response. And to the response, we send hello from my API. Now, this won't immediately change. We don't have any live reload yet, but we can now run node index.js again, and then we can just go to a localhost. Come on, localhost. There we go. And hello from my API. I could change this to test, update it, and it won't update because I have to restart it manually, and then I would see test. And we could also, of course, use now our Insomnia testing tool to make a request. So let's do a new HTTP request. I'm gonna copy this because I'm ultimately lazy. I'm gonna send this. And we get hello from my API. Now, usually what you get from an API doesn't look like that. Usually you see some kind of structured response, which is a JSON object. So let's change this. Let's make a new endpoint instead of this one. And let's call this get users. And we define a simple array of users. And now we send a JSON object to our response. So let's see this in action. If we go ahead, node index.js. Back to Insomnia. Oh, I apparently closed this. I'm sorry. Then I cannot get this anymore. Yes, I can get users. And there we get a nice JSON object that our front-end application could use now. However, what you see is like, is this real world? Do I have to manually restart this all the time? No, you certainly don't have to, and you don't want to. So let's see how we can improve this. Also, pretty much every modern application these days is using TypeScript. So we also should use TypeScript in this project. And in fact, like if you're using Nest.js or any of the other frameworks, usually by default, they are now using TypeScript anyway. So let's try and set this up in our blank node project. I really wanted to start with the basics so you get a feeling for like how this started and how it evolved. Because you can install a boilerplate NodeJS or Express API and you get like tons of prettier TypeScript, transpile, tons of files in there. But like you've seen, we just need a package.json and an index.json to actually create an API. And from there, you can just stack more things on top to improve the developer experience and ultimately your app. Okay, what we now need is to install to our development dependencies. So those are just used during development. They're not part of the final build of your application. We install TypeScript and we install NodeMon. So NodeMon can be used to use live reload, which means it's watching your files and automatically update the app. And to get better typing, we also install from the @types repository the packages for Node and Express. This is a very common practice to install these as well. Okay, after installing them, you can find them in the package.json in the dev dependencies array. So here's just Express, here's the rest we just installed. And now we need a new file, and we're going to call this tsconfig. So this is the configuration file for TypeScript and how TypeScript transpiles our code. And this is now something we need to, but you can actually generate this with the CLI as well, but the output isn't really optimum. So we have a bunch of compile options that you don't really need to worry about. They're just default settings you can find all the time. Most important is the outdir. This is the directory where your Typescript, your transpiled files will be put into. So they will look at the JavaScript or look at the TypeScript later and then generate JavaScript from there. It includes everything under source. So we're gonna move our stuff into a source folder for a better structure. And I also wanna change my index.js to an index.ts file instead now. Okay. With that in place, I also want to update my package.json. So the main entry point will be inside our dist folder. It will not be the index.json, but inside the dist folder, like we've specified in the ts config. So if you're using a different output folder, you might have a different name here. On top of that, we're gonna replace the test scripts here with something like this. To build our app, we run the TypeScript compile here. And to start it, we also run node. And if we wanna use it for development, we're gonna use nodemon. So let's use all of these commands. Let's try npm run. Hey, yeah, nice. This immediately picks up the scripts. That's cool. Let's do a build. And here we go, the first TypeScript errors. Welcome to the world of TypeScript, where you get errors that you previously never had. So this comes from a specification here, no implicit any. If I would change this to false, those errors would go away. However, I actually think it's a good thing. This simply means parameter request implicitly has any type. So if you don't define the type, everything has the any type. But we can actually get the right types for our application by importing them from the right packages. So let's do this. We can do this from Express. Instead of using require, we could now use, let's comment this out. And we can just say import Express from Express. Now this is the first import, which oh nice, this immediately already fixes the problem. We're gonna later probably see another issue. However, for the moment, this is everything we need to do. So changing it to the import and not using require anymore is enough to fix this. Now we also have this port definition here, and I don't really like this. Usually in APIs, you're gonna have some kind of environment file, like a .env file, and there you put your secret keys and other stuff. Also, if you later deploy your API somewhere, having a fixed port here usually won't work because those services gonna assign you an API and you're gonna grab this from the process environment. So they're gonna always add their port there. So in order to get started with this, let's install another package called .env. This is the typical package that is used to load a .environment. And we can just import it just like we did for Express from .env, and then we just need to call .env.config. And by default, this will simply load the .env file here. So let's put something in here like port equals 3000. You don't have to do any kind of like formatting. It's really just name equals something, not a JSON or anything. Although you could probably have a YAML file or something more structured. And now we're gonna use, instead of the default value, we're gonna use process.env.port. And let's see if this starts up our application again. We can actually, let's do npm run build. That was the one that failed before. It works. We see we have a dist folder now. And if I do npm run dev, it loads nodemon. And the app is starting on port 3K. Where's my insomnia? Can I confirm this? Yes, the application still seems to work on that port. So now we're loading the port from our environment. By the way, this is our transpiled file. It just becomes a JS file again afterwards. So from TypeScript, this is the output in plain good old vanilla JavaScript. Okay, so we've built up our project to now use live reload, to use TypeScript, and I think we can now implement the real CRUD functionality of our application. So let's do this. I'm gonna just extract the users here. I make this outside here so we can actually change those users later a bit. And to get our users, we can still use pretty much the same call like we had before. That should still work. We can now easily switch. We could probably also do it. Would it work better in here? Would that look better to you? I don't know. Let's see. If I do it in here, we can easily switch. Let's do a new request, API call. I'm gonna send this JSON text. Yeah, if I zoom in like this, yeah, it's probably not the best to view in here. Like it usually looks good, but not if you zoom in 4 times probably. So let's use for that our Insomnia again. Again, the result is still in here. I'm gonna probably make this a bit smaller. Okay, on top of that, we can now use our other functions of the API. So CRUD means create, read, update, and delete. This here is read. However, that means we still need a few others. Let's add a post route. So usually it comes before. So to create, we would have to add an object to our array, and we can use app.post. So previously we defined a get endpoint, now we define a post endpoint. We're gonna see how to use this in Postman. Once again, to users, so we can use different types of calls to our user's endpoint, and we just create a new user from the request body and giving it a random ID, and then we push that new user and return also the new user. Let's see how this looks. Okay, we got the get request. I think I added this here. So we can now switch to post, again to users, and we're gonna add a JSON body with a name, my new user. Let's send this. Ooh, cannot read properties of undefined, reading name. That means our app is not yet able to actually access the body of a call. And to overcome this problem, in the past you had to install a package to use JSON. This is now actually quite easy possible. So the only thing we need to do is we need to tell our app to use an additional package. And that one's just express.json. This is using a middleware. I just want to put up the word here. We're gonna get into using a middleware a bit more in a second. But to fix our call, we are now using this middleware. It simply means middleware happens somewhere in the life cycle of a request. It comes into our application, then it uses the middleware, then it executes the actual definition of our endpoint. So if we now go back to Insomnia and hit the send again, we see that I get back this. And the coolest thing on earth is that if I go now to get users, I get the array with the new user in. I mean, this is really something very small, but I still remember when I got started with programming and I made my first API and I didn't understand a thing. And then I saw like, oh, I can actually change data. This is how stuff works. I was like, and we can do the same now. We can do all kinds of transformations here. And this is like just the starting point to understand how an API works. Of course, usually you have a database and not a local users object and make queries to that database. However, like this is the basic stuff that we need to understand. The CRUD operations that happen. You transform the data, you change something, and then you get back the result. This is really like the basic stuff. Now, let's see how we could update something. Maybe you could actually pause the video and write it yourself. Create, read, update. So to update something, I can tell you need to use put, app.put, and then something like this. So hit pause and try to update the repository, the users array. Okay, you did this. Great. Your code might look different, but this is an option how you could do it. You could extract the ID and name from the body, and then map all the users, find the user that matches that ID, and change the username to the new name. I don't want to change the ID. That would be kind of strange. You would never do this, although you would also never use like an in-memory users array. but this is how you could do this. So let's hit save. And also notice how we already got used to live reload and just doing this thing all again. It's pretty cool. So let's do a new request. We got our users. I'm gonna make a new HTTP request to users. I'm gonna make a put request, JSON body, and I'm gonna input ID 1, name, updated name lol, and hit send. And this is what we get back. Our array is now changed, and if I get this, I get the new updated data. Why did I use lol? I don't know. Okay, we got create, read, and update. Let's do a delete as well. So delete starts with app.delete and following the same syntax like before. So give it a try yourself. Dum, 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 dum. And then your result might look something like this. I extract the ID from the body and I filter the users, and I just make sure that the user with that ID is not included anymore. Because we're using in-memory data, notice that every time I get back to this initial array. So of course, no change is persistent here, but this is just really just a demo. Let's do a new HTTP request to that endpoint using delete. And in the body, I'm gonna send ID 2. Hit send, and we're left with this small array. I can also remove this one and that one, and then we just have an empty array left. What a pity. No more data in there. Usually this is the starting point. Like we got create, read, we got update and delete in here. However, most of the time you're gonna also implement something where you like want to get the data for one specific user. And in those cases, get one user, you're gonna dive a bit deeper into this and use route parameters. So a route parameter is, let's grab this code from before. A simple definition in here. You can even have something like a wildcard with a star, or you can have route parameters like this. Doesn't matter, you could also use whatever in here, but it typically, like, you want to get the details of a user. That's just the REST specification. Also here, would you send the delete to user/ID? I'm just thinking, probably, maybe. I'm not 100% sure about that. Anyway, now if we want to get the information for one specific user, I can say const id equals request.params.id. Oh, nice. I even get code completion for that. And then I can simply figure out the user by using a filter on my users. If I hit the right key, users.filter, one user, user.id equals ID. And this will complain because Typescript. Condition will always return false since typed numbers and string have no overlap. So what we get here, if we extract it like this, is a string. However, the user ID has the type number. And if you want to convert something from a string to a number in the most easiest way in JavaScript, just put a plus in here. And then the ID becomes a number. It's that easy. Sometimes it's that easy. And then we're gonna just return our JSON object, the user. Let's hit save. Let's go back to Postman. We got a fresh array of users, and let's say new request, get users, number 3, nobody required, and voila. We just get, I actually kind of want to do like, I want to get the user. Let's do the first object. That's not safe to do, folks out there. This is not completely safe. You should check if you get back an array. Actually, in the array contains an item, but in this case, I think we can make a little, yeah. Let's just do it. Okay, we learned a ton of things already. Let's get back to the concept of middleware. So I told you that with app.use you can introduce middleware, and middleware is used in tons of cases with Express. So let's add a simple function that is like the basic version of how you could implement authentication. So I'm going to define this function is authorized with 3 values here: request, result, and next function. We're going to talk about that in a second. This will simply extract the authorization header from a request and check if that header is equal to my secret value, or you could have something in your env file. That would be a nice exercise. And then I call the next function. So middleware, as I said, is somewhere in the lifecycle of a request event. So it's accepted, the middleware is executed, and if I then call next, the next middleware or the next function is executed. Otherwise, I'm going to send a 401 back and it is finished. No next function. And now we can use our own function that we've written here and simply apply it to this one. And I'm just going to put it here, is authorized, and that is our handler. That is our middleware right here applied to this. So let's see. If I now go back to Insomnia and try to access this one, no access, no more, 401 unauthorized. And really, this is like the basic idea behind like the JWT authentication you see in most modern applications. Really, they're just checking for a header field. If the header field has a certain value, you're gonna allow the function and probably extract some information and decode the JWT to some user ID. Otherwise, no access. Really, it's that easy. And we can add this, we can go to headers. Let's add an, we should call this authorization. Thanks for the completion. This is very typical. My secret value is not typical. But if I send it like this, access granted. So you know the master of the API and you are in control. You can protect your API. Well, like it's a very easy kind of protection. Probably in some cases this might actually be enough. This complains because it has the type any, like we had before. So to fix this, we can now actually import something from Express as well. So we can import request, response, next function, and request handler, also extracting this from Express. Now we go back and add these. So request is of the type request. Here we got the response. Next is the next function. And if you wanted to, you can say is authorized. This is a type of a request handler. And then everyone is completely satisfied because I can now run npm run build. And it should hopefully result. Yeah, it works. Okay. So what we want to do now is interesting because right now our API is only available on localhost. And I want to show you the complete picture from starting this to going live, because I think this is just a good feeling to have. If you know the whole flow, I really like to, whenever I start a new project, an application, something, I really want to see that the critical path works. And for an API, the critical path is understanding how to build it, how to write endpoints, how to start it, and how to deploy it. And now we get to this deploy. So you can pretty much deploy this wherever you have a Node environment running. You could have this on your own server. However, I usually tend to use different services. In the past, I used Heroku. Heroku, but I don't really like Heroku anymore. Simply, it has become very old to me. They changed last year the free dyno, so you can't have like a real free plan anymore. And just in general, it feels very old and like it hasn't really grown. However, platforms like Railway have grown, have emerged, and look so much better, and they work really, really great. So there are different other platforms. However, I really like Railway, and I want to use this now to deploy my app. So I created my account, I signed in with GitHub, and now I can deploy from a GitHub repository. Okay, problem, we don't have a GitHub repository, but we can do this easily. So let's go to GitHub. Create your account if you have never done this, and hit new repository. I'm gonna call this Node API video. Actually, I'll make this private. I'm not gonna adding anything else, and I'm gonna create this. Okay, this looks good. So now I need to connect my local project with GitHub. However, I don't even have a git ignore. Let's do this. Let's add a file git ignore. Can you just automatically fill that git ignore? Git ignore node. No, not node, like node project. Well, let's call this express project. Whatever. Yeah, looks good to me. Probably a bit too much actually, but it's okay. Okay, since we don't even have a Git repository locally, let's call git init in our repository, and now it has become a Git repository. We even see everything here is under source control. Most important is really that you don't upload your node modules, and I think this should be, yeah, Bower components there, node modules, yeah. Thanks, node modules not included. That's good. So now we can follow the recommendation here. We called git init. We don't need a readme right now. I'm gonna call git commit. I'm actually gonna call git add dot first of all to add all of our files. Then I'm gonna add my first commit. Then I don't need to branch main simply because I have a local setting that automatically uses the main branch and not master anymore. However, if you don't have this, you need to run that command. Then we're gonna finally add our remote repository on GitHub, and then I'm gonna push my main branch, gonna add the key here, upload it. Okay, what just happened is that if I now refresh, I'm gonna see my code in here. We have the source, we have our index.ts, we don't have the env file in here, so that won't be an issue because I think Railway will automatically fill the process env port and we don't need to set this manually. At least that's what I hope. Okay, I think we're ready. Let's see how we can connect this GitHub repository now. Deploy from GitHub. I should probably give it some more access. I really like this. Yes, thank you. Come again. Railway app only selected repositories. Okay, yeah. Node API video. Yes, I'm gonna allow this, and we're back. And Node API video. There's my private. I just didn't give Railway full access to all repositories. I just picked the repository, so I had to update this. Now let's select this. Deploy from GitHub. What can we help with? Do I need variables? I don't know. Let's call deploy now. Let's just go for it. I don't know if we need this actually. No building. First commit. Let's view the logs. Can we do this live? I want to live see the logs. And this is the cool thing about a service like this. It usually figures out what to do with your project based on the stuff you have defined in your package JSON. So if you have a build script defined, it will usually run this. If you have a start script, it will usually run this after a build. And then we'll just spin up some kind of Docker instance and upload your node based on like whatever it finds in your project. So why is this taking so long? I fear that it's not working. Please work. Why do you take so long to deploy? This is like the easiest form of an API that I could have come up with. But yeah, well, it's spinning up something and oh, there's the green check mark. It looks like it's working. Yeah, now it's running our TSC and node and it's listening on this port. Interesting. Let's go back. How can we access this from the world? Automatically main. So this is also the cool thing. We're gonna see this in a second. Let's generate a domain because I want to access this. There is my domain. I don't really need to change this right now, but let's go back to Insomnia. And this is now the critical test. Are we able to simply exchange what we had in here with this? No, we're not. Why? Why are we not able actually? Do I still need? I don't need that port. That would be ridiculous. Cannot get. I should have probably left that route open. Oh, I can get users in here, but not here. Oh, I was just bullet dodged. I was just too fast. Okay, it looked like I can access my API. Can I just change whatever I want? Yes, it just works. It just works. I can also update my name, right? Yes, updated name. I can do whatever I want. updated name. Everything works on my deployed instance. This is nice. And now the last thing I wanted to show you is that we could, let's say I want to add a new user to my dummy data here, user 4 William. So how would I get a new version of this deployed? And this is the cool thing about a service like this. The only thing we need now is to run a commit, git commit, add user, git push. This will push our code to GitHub, to the repository, and change it. And because our application here on Railway is listening, you see this? You see this? It just automatically started a new build process right here. Building a few seconds ago via GitHub. Because GitHub has webhooks, I don't need to understand them, but simply said, GitHub will tell Railway, hey, there's new code available. Do you want to do something? And Railway says, yeah, of course. I want to do another build and I want to redeploy this. And we don't have to do anything about this. This will simply redeploy the app with everything defined before. So we could have different variables here. This would be the same as accessing them from our environment. So if you set up like secret keys in your environment, you would then also set them up here inside of a service. And after a few seconds, let me grab the URL again. No, I don't want to change this. I want to access it. How long is the deployment taking? Shouldn't take too long. Let's see. /users. This is still... Oh no, did I actually commit my code? Did I? Oh, come on, is this cached? No, it's still building. It's still deploying. I don't know why this is taking like, build time is 10 seconds, but the deploy time is probably a bit longer. However, that doesn't really matter too much in the end. The main important takeaway is that we don't need to do anything about it. And it automatically triggers this user. We see even the commit message in here. I want it to finish now. I want to add it on a good note and show the updated thing. Please do it. Okay, this actually took longer than expected. However, it's now finished. And where's my 4th user? Where is it? The name changed. The name probably changed. I need to be careful with this one. Or it's just like before that I'm trolling myself. Yeah, there is the good old William now. We got everyone in here. How can change this now? My get request, get users. Is this still? Yes. And there we got it. From starting a Node project to hosting it on Railway, everything covered. Alright, and that's it for today's tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this little introduction to the Node API with Express, and I think I felt very great when I had the first time running API, because I felt like, yes, I can do front end, I can do back end, I'm a one-man army and I can do whatever I want. And you don't really need to get further into Node if you don't want to. If you don't want to create an API or backend, there are different services like Supabase and AppWrite and Firebase that we used as well as an alternative, but it's good to understand what's going on the server side, and also that if you wanted to, you could potentially learn a bit more about it and create a powerful API. Again, check out galaxies.dev and make sure you subscribe to the channel for more videos in the future. Until then, I hope you have a great week with epic code, and as always, happy coding, Simon.